Over the past few months, I've found myself with very little time for knitting. But did this stop me buying more yarn? It absolutely did not. I had so many projects in mind before the summer arrived, but I only got round to a handful of them. This has landed me in the predicament of having more yarn than I've ever had before, which brings us to the topic of today's video. Some of you may know that I'm not usually someone that keeps much of a yarn stash. I tend to strictly buy yarn for specific projects and will frequently use up my scraps and leftovers to make smaller pieces. Since starting my new job, I've had the chance to buy more yarn, but unfortunately had much less time to knit with it. To make matters worse, I live in a really tiny studio flat, which simply doesn't have the space to house all my potential craft supplies. And so I was thinking, at least if I knit up all of these balls of yarn and make them into something, they can live in my wardrobe instead of having to live in my very tiny yarn cupboard. As some of you may have noticed, I've also been away from YouTube for quite a while. This was largely because of my new job, but also because I felt slightly conflicted and frustrated when contemplating my next video. When I first started YouTube, I had a rough genre in mind, and feel like I kind of ignored some of the other ideas that I had because they didn't completely fit with what I'd set out to be. Part of my absence was also down to my frustrations with the podcasting format, which I feel is absolutely beautifully demonstrated by some other creators, but doesn't quite resonate with the way that I think about sharing my experience of making clothes. So to get myself out of this funk, I want to organise my yarn and let you know that you may see me try a few different things in the next few months on my channel. As I make the shift from Orsa Knits to Orsa Makes, I'm hoping to share some of what actually inspires my projects, which could include snippets of my life here in Italy, new pieces I add to my wardrobe, or other projects I'd like to try out. Changing my name does not mean I will share any less of my knitting, as knitting will always be my first love. But I just hope that it will allow me to broaden the scope of what I want to make and share and let me reconnect with some of the other crafts that I really enjoy. So to take some inspiration from what I already have, I wanted to go through my yarn cupboard with you to try and find projects that could use up my stash. Some of this yarn has already been matched to a project that I'm waiting to start, but I've also got plenty that needs new ideas. So if you have any pattern recommendations while you watch the video, please do drop them down below. As you can see, I kind of have yarn hiding everywhere. My little yarn cupboard is the place where I keep most of my odd bits, but I've also got some above my sofa and even in my wardrobe. It's becoming a little bit of a yarn tsunami, and I feel like it's only a matter of time before my boyfriend realises exactly how much I've managed to accumulate. The first larger addition to my stash is this gorgeous matching set from Knitting for Olive. So this is the Knitting for Olive Merino and Knitting for Olive Kidsilk in the shade Dusty Dove Blue. I got this yarn as kind of an impulse buy when one of my favourite online shops was having a sale, and I really don't regret it. This combination from Knitting for Olive is something I've wanted to try for absolutely ages, and I have to say that it really does live up to the hype. The Mohair is probably one of the softest that I've tried, and I really like the ethical ethos behind the brand, so even if it is a bit more pricey, I think it's definitely worth it. With this yarn, I'm currently knitting up a lacy Whitmore cardigan, which I think really suits the vintage blue hue. And I kind of feel like once it's done, there'll be something a little bit Parisian about it, which I am all for this spring and summer. One of the other larger quantities of yarn that I've got is this fluffy combination of Drops Lima and Drops Alpaca Silk. I purchased this way back at the beginning of winter along with the same quantities in grey. Now the grey has been used up for my much loved Moby sweater by Petite Knit, which I'll give you a quick look of now, and I really enjoy holding these two together as it creates a really thick and slightly stiff fabric, which I think will make things that I knit with it really durable and warm. Now, stiff fabric might not sound ideal, but I do think that it lends itself very well to cabled designs because it holds its shape and it allows you to get good stitch definition. I purchased these yarns in 2 colours because I wanted lots of options for my Moby sweater, but I feel like the grey was the best choice as it's the most classic option. And I'm so pleased with the way that it turned out and really enjoyed using the Alpaca Silk, which is a softer and less itchy alternative to Mohair. However, I am a little bit uncertain about holding these two other colours together, as I feel like they look quite different from the pictures that I saw online. So if you have any patterns to suggest for either of these, together or separately, please do let me know. The Lima is a DK weight when it's held alone, and the Alpaca Silk I feel is closer to a light sport weight. So together they knit up as an Aran. Now, speaking of Alpaca Silk, I do also have a jumper quantity of just Alpaca Silk, which I'm thinking about holding 2 or 3 strands of together. And this is a really interesting sort of forest green colour, which is part of the reason why I haven't used it yet, because I've been trying to think about how it would pair with things in my wardrobe. I've been trying to contemplate whether I should do something lacy or just let the colour speak for itself. So I'm a little bit indecisive about this one, and I do think that it could be very cute to save for a fuzzy Christmas jumper, because I definitely plan on making another Christmas jumper this year. But yeah, another one that I'm looking for a pattern for. Now, my final larger quantity is also an Aran weight combination, but this one is from Sandnes Garn. Like the previous Knitting for Olive Mohair pairing, this is also a brand that I've been wanting to try forever. I was extremely curious about this yarn in particular, which is called Gynt and is 100% Norwegian wool. I think it feels just divine and so rustic and fuzzy, and I got this yarn with the idea of creating a vest pattern back in January, but feel like spring came much quicker than I had expected, so I'll put this aside until we have some colder weather and inspiration strikes for my vest pattern. Funnily enough, I did a similar thing with another Sandnes Garn yarn from last year, which is the fluffy alpaca blend called Kos. I also planned to make a vest with this one, but wasn't really happy with the fit that I got when I started mocking it up, so I frogged it. But I suppose you'll just have to wait and see which one I actually managed to make into a vest first. I'm thinking of maybe creating something with lace or cables, because I'm really into creating textured pieces that are a little bit of a challenge to me at the moment. As I've shown you 2 yarn choices that are waiting to be made into patterns, I also want to share some of my summer yarn and the knits that are currently in progress. I got these 2 beautiful summer yarns from a Spanish shop online, and they came in this funny little shoebox. The brown balls are Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino in this lovely warm shade of nut brown, while the white balls are also Knitting for Olive, but it's in their pure silk in the colour Putty. I'm very excited to share that the brown cotton merino is being knit up into a very pretty summer top as part of a test knit for the very talented Vert Knit. I'll link her work on her Instagram down below if you want to check her out. This top is absolutely stunning, and I just couldn't resist signing up to test it. It will be a charming off-the-shoulder stretchy top that I can't wait to pair with jeans or maybe a long skirt for a more dressed up evening outfit. I feel like it can be difficult to find knitting patterns that are suitable for evening wear, which is why I was so excited about this one. And this is called the Juno top, so check it out if you're interested. And in complete contrast, or at least I feel it's in complete contrast, this white yarn is going to be made into a very casual but equally stunning Barbro top, which is an intricate lace pattern that can be found on Knitting for Olive's website. I'm so excited about both of these projects and really hope I get lots of wear out of them at the end of this summer. I've been sharing some of my progress on these pieces over on my Instagram, so if you are interested in seeing the behind the scenes before they get made into a final piece in one of my videos, do be sure to follow me over there too. Now, next up is a Katia yarn that has been languishing at the back of my cupboard for ages, but I think I'm finally ready to pull it out and put it to good use. This is a fingering weight cotton that has quite a slick feel to it, so I think it could be a good fit for a camisole that has plenty of texture. Some which I've had my eye on include the camisole number 7 by My Favourite Things, which I just think is very elegant and effortless, or this stunning Augusta lace camisole, both of which will be linked down below. Now we come on to the section that I'm having a little bit more difficulty with, because it's slightly less easy to find patterns for such tiny quantities. As I enjoy creating pieces in blends of mohair and wool, I've accumulated lots of odd bits of both. In particular, I have several balls of fingering weight yarn that I have 2 colourwork projects in mind for. As I tend to use yarn that's fairly complementary, I feel like tonal colour work would be a great way to use up these spare balls. The first project that I'm thinking of is creating a Fair Isle scarf for my dad's birthday in August. He really loves the colour blue, so I think if I use this deep shade with some creams and browns, it could make a great traditional colourwork scarf. The second piece I have in mind is something that many of you have asked me about because I frogged it due to the issues that I was having with the colours, and that is the Scout Shawl by Florence Sperling. Now, this was an extremely ambitious piece for me at the time, and I do feel like I was slightly out of my depth, and I just wasn't happy with the combination of pinks and yellows I had selected. I'd been inspired by the yarn choices that she used, but I feel like they just weren't quite me. So I'm thinking that I'm gonna take some of these browns, yellows, blues, and whites from my stash and do something that's a little bit better suited to my taste. And yeah, I just hope I'll be able to conquer this absolutely amazing pattern and make something that I'll truly treasure. And now, of course, I have plenty of other spare balls that are looking for patterns too. So any suggestions are welcome, and it's only natural that we'll end up with lots of leftovers from larger projects. But I do think it can be so satisfying to use up the scraps that we have and find out just what goes together, what textures and colours complement each other. It's part of the fun of knitting in a way. Thank you for sticking around until the end and being patient with me since it's taken me so long to post this video. I'm optimistic that this little change will help me share more of what interests me, whether that's the creation of new knits or aspects of my life that feed into and inspire the clothing that I create. And I really hope to see you back in the next episode. Bye!